You know, the police in the early years, like in the late 70s and the 80s, they were very, very tough. And they would basically, I think, pick on anybody that was different or seemed different. Or what I like to say is undefined. Like, there was no definition for a person that covered their car with pennies and drove around. So he would get pulled over. And then I think once I did that first film in '92, Wild Wheels, that started to define what these people were doing. It was actually a form of expression. They weren't drug addicts, they weren't crazy, well, not all of them. And yeah, so it's a relative term, craziness, you know. It just so happens that these people are actually exuding their eccentricities, whereas most of us hide it in the closet or behind our normal vehicle, so no one knows who you really are. The interviews, the challenge was to try to get, for me, was try to get to the inner psychology of what made them do it. And sometimes people, like right now, the generation, the younger generation especially, I think, is trying to portray themselves how they want to be portrayed to others on Facebook or however, whatever it is. And I think this is a real interesting issue because we all know we're being looked at now. Everyone has a camera. We're all being filmed. So how do you want to portray yourself to others? And that's exactly what I had trouble with a lot of the characters. They knew I was making a movie. They had seen the first movie, Wild Wheels, so they wanted to portray themselves as this cool, kooky person. But I didn't want that. I wanted to get really what was driving them because they'd been doing it for years before I had ever met them. So my goal was to get the real deal, the real person behind the mask, and break it down. And it wasn't easy, you know. I had to film hours and hours of footage. This is 77 minutes of over 120 hours that I shot in 13 years. So this is like the truest truths that I could get from all the subjects. And you know, I didn't really get there with all of them. You know, I like Hoop, for example. I never figured out what was driving Hoop other than having fun and zany, you know, type of thing. But the real Hoop underneath it, I don't think I got to it. And you know what you were saying today, maybe that's not the point. Maybe that's not what we should be trying to figure out. The fact is that he did this, and you know, the question is, well, is it worthwhile? Is it something like in New York area, is Hoop a real artist? Or I don't think he's given that credential in New York. Yeah, and he's not represented by a gallery, and he doesn't play the game. But you know what? Everyone has seen Hoop's cars for the last 20 plus years in the New York area, and he makes a lot of people happy, and he moves them. So that's, to me, that's art, and that he should be celebrated. We did shoot him. That interview was shot in front of the Twin Towers. I had to cut it out because it was conjuring up too much about 9/11 and the Twin Towers, but he was arguing that how come a baseball player in New York would get you know, more money and more fame and everything for what they do, and he's having to scratch the surface just to get, you know, enough food to go to survive a day, you know. He doesn't have a job. I mean, he just, I'm not sure exactly how Hoop survives, but he barely gets by. It's what drives me. You know, it's what drives me. I think that our values as a culture are really screwed up. And the way that we see the automobile is really screwed up, in my opinion. I think that the value of creativity and expressing yourself and that type of thing is not valued as much as how much money you may make in this world. You know, your status as a valuable human being is based more on, like, you know, the money that you can bring in, the job you hold, that type of thing. But you know, a lot of these people are, I think, underappreciated, and that's why I wanted to shed light on this medium, that these are the heroes to me, you know, that in our communities. They shed color and joy to everywhere they go. The front door is an excellent idea. A front door. You know, part of my inspiration, when I was 16 years old, I read a book called 7 Arrows about Native Americans and how they decorated their teepee, their medicine wheel in front of their teepee. And the medicine wheel would say, through symbolic objects or art, the type of person they really were. And I thought that was really neat because they could walk through the community, the village, and make associations with others that they had something in common with instantly, instead of, you know, not bringing it out. I don't know, it's interesting. But you know, the way we value our cars is just one value. You know, and I'm questioning how we value a lot of things. Like, for example, my mom got cancer in a while back, and she died in 2005. In the effort to try to save her, I learned a lot about how we deal with the treatment of cancer and therapies and doctors and diagnosis and who we trust and why. And that value is also something I think that we're, you know, taught from a baby what to believe, and it's shaped over many years. My mom would not go astray from what her doctor told her. There's no way I could say, hey, there's this therapy in Germany, there's this option over here. No, I'm going to do what my doctor wants to do. And I respected her for that. And I don't know what it's like when I'm in those shoes yet. I think everyone's going to make that decision when they get there. But I don't know, it's an interesting thing when you think about it. Why do we believe what we believe? You know, it pretty much is. It's branched out into the UK now. There's about 4 art car parades in the UK, even though to have an art car and drive it is illegal. You cannot put a hood ornament on your car in England. It could impair somebody in the crosswalk. That was the logic behind it. And guess what? Schwarzenegger in the state of California is trying to pass a law to not allow anyone to modify their car, period. That he wants the cars to be like they come out of the manufacturing plant, and that's it. And he's from, you know, originally German. And in Germany, you can't do any of this stuff. I think maybe that's why Hamburger Harry, you know, came to the US, so he can make that crazy burger mobile. But, you know, in other countries, they have art cars. They have trucks. I've seen over the years many, many images: Afghanistan, the Philippines, Mexico, India, Japan. You know, there's all kinds of vehicles, but they're pretty much a cultural phenomenon. Like most of the taxis in the Philippines would be decorated. It's a different type of thing. It's not really the individual so much with their individual expression. It's more of the culture. If I was to do another work, it would be like international, exploring, you know, the way people do this around the world. But that's going to take a long time because I'm pretty much have done this, and it's pretty much taken everything I had. The next movie is going to be on Burning Man. It'll be, who knows, 3 or 4 more years. I haven't started editing. I shot it, but I've got a ways to go. There's some corporate shops. Like if you had a business and you wanted to get like the Oscar Mayer Wiener thing done, you can hire a team of artists to do it. Tom Kennedy, who had the Shark car, was making vehicles for patrons of Burning Man. He died on Easter. He actually drowned, and which was ironic because all of his work was based on sea creatures, sharks and whales and dolphins and shark bikes. And but he was just starting to get really booked. He was building 4 cars a year so people could go to Burning Man with this wild ride. Burning Man, you know, and art car parades is a different type of thing, because if you make an art car just to be at Burning Man or just to go to the parade, it's not like your identity. They call them daily drivers. These are daily drivers. These are cars that people use. It's part of their identity. It's the difference.